Thank you for joining me for the final episode of the News Tonight. I'm your host, Gilbert Chavez. We've done about maybe half a day's worth of content pertaining to reality, conspiracy, imagination, history, and it was all ignited as my own visceral response to the murder of Charlie Kirk, who I've established I had no connection and no prior compassion for, truly, as it was apparent he was bought out by the Israel lobby, by AIPAC and other Zionist oligarchs. Right, it's easy to be tribalistic and label all Jews or all of one group of people responsible, but there are American Christians, American-born Jews that are part of the Zionist agenda that extends past Israel's borders. There are many people involved. We talked about secret societies, right? And I guess before we get into the episode, I just wanted to run down some of the things we covered over season 1, right? In the first episode, we did talk about Charlie Kirk's murder a little bit. Today, we're going to dissect it, pretty much the entire string of events and related peoples and reports and stuff like that. But yes, in the first episode, we tied connections to other assassinations and events that occurred in our history that were traumatic, I guess, for society at large. Changed history forever. Patsies, right? The people that get blamed for these crimes and are ultimately looked at as lone gunmen or lone conspirators. No conspirators, co-conspirators. In the second episode, we looked into the unidentified aerial phenomenon as well as alien reproduction vehicles, as per the testament to one Amy Eskridge, who was murdered. She lost her life due to a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and her last partner was adamant that there is no Holocaust in Gaza, where more than 600,000 people, half of that being children, have been murdered, bombed, bulldozed, raped, burned alive with American taxpayers' money. Number 3, we went over the history of Judaism as per the Bible, and what the Zionists believe gives them right to most of the Middle East. Ultimately, in Christianity, when Christ died on the cross, and I only know this because, right, I listened to one of Tucker Carlson's most recent videos. Basically, when Christ died on the cross, that was the fulfillment of the Old Testament. And the Old Testament, in the first half of the Bible, which is the Jews' Torah, right? The Torah of Judaism, declares that only Jews were God's chosen people. But through Christianity and Christ's sacrifice, the entirety of humanity has been saved through His glory, right? That's the lore there. And episode 4, we went over secret societies, how they embed themselves in systems of power and derive from ancient teachings, right, that go back to Egypt and before. In episode 5, we went over MK Ultra, one of those ancient teachings that has been passed down from ancient Egypt. It has embedded itself in psychology and also intelligence, and has been used to erase people's memories, install initiatives that are not their own, and cause them to take people's lives without being able to remember the events leading up to that or any programming that took place. In episode 6, we went over militant transgenderism and transhumanism, right? Trantifa. And we discussed how through a mass implication of MK Ultra, you could install an identity in a group of people and have it become a conversation about political and human rights when it's a psychological operation meant to destroy humanity and masculinity. In episode 7, we went over Revelation of the Method, through which these hidden power systems are obligated to reveal what evil they commit and take part in as part of a higher legal system that goes beyond anything imagined in any law, any physical law on earth. In episode 8, we talked about the CIA, an organization that basically was invented to protect America, but became a cancerous tumor that mostly has sustained itself in a way that's similar to the Vatican in Rome, where it's become its own almost breakaway society, breakaway government. And in the last episode, we talked about Atlantis and pre-ancient history and how those ancient servants of darkness, through technology that modern man thinks is fictional or impossible, has maintained control through the ages and now wishes to set forth their final plan that has been in motion for thousands, if not millions of years. Welcome to the news tonight. The date is April 10th, 2026. This is your news tonight. With your host, Gilbert Chavez. So I don't remember saying this in the first episode, but upon the assassination of Charlie Kirk, I lost sleep. I work irregular hours, as I've stated before. And as I've stated before, I mean, you'd be loath to gather your information from MSNBC, CNN, or Fox News, as they are arms of the propaganda state, which serve the parasitical oligarchs at the top, right? I would say the people in power. In past episodes, we could call them pips, I guess. As I was getting different perspectives on the death of Charlie Kirk, I could see that it was more than meets the eye. I could understand a lot of the mockery that was coming from the liberal and the left side, as a lot of our society has been built on materialism and just a front-facing image. So especially in the internet age where people's attention spans have been reduced to like grounded down nubs. People only take away something at face value and are infinitesimally reductive, so that when they see you act a certain way on your clip, that becomes everything they know about you. So for a lot of people my age and younger, maybe half or less than half the country, Charlie Kirk was, and even people older than me, people I respect as well, I had conversations about this. They view him as a Nazi or a white supremacist, and at best a Christian nationalist, which I think there, like I said, there are levels of extremism. There's a certain level of respect and compassion I think one would feel for their country and their countrymen, and then there's fascism where everybody's expected to act a certain way, pray a certain way, worship a certain way, stuff like that, and um, we live in a free society so that we are ultimately the arbiters of our own fate and power and governance, as much as it's seemingly been and mostly literally been stripped away from us through the ages. To where right before Donald Trump got elected, there was stories in the New York Times suggesting that the Bill of Rights was unnecessary and needed to be reapproached. I'm not making this up. Um, I also saw people responding in the most like visceral, and I can only describe it, demonic way to Charlie Kirk's death. Basically saying that more conservative blood need to be spilled, and this was just a start that the left had to be taken seriously and all this other stuff. Um, I felt compelled to mitigate the tension. Uh, if there's one thing I could be useful for in my community, is to make sure there's no confusion, no purposeful schism put upon us, so that we're not able to see what's really going on in front of our face, and that we're not used for somebody else's agenda. And it's easy because, like I said, people are reduced to one mode of living or one label or another. Um, there are these voices coming from the gay community saying not to have empathy, just per quoting Charlie's view on empathy, right? That empathy was suicidal, and I think after we get to a point to where children are not being murdered and raped and eaten for profit, then we can have conversations about philosophical conversations, because all this hemming and hawing is is just division made to misdirect us, right? And it's just unfortunate that I've had like, just for example, and this is nothing, right? Because it's not real life, but uh, one of my sisters unfollowed me on social media because the Charlie Kirk stuff. I don't know if she was offended by my perspective on it, which at the time it felt like, and I put it out there, it felt like a Roman sacrifice. Like we were all just like bread and circus. We're all just the commoners who, you know, have no real say in society, and we could overthrow the empire, but to distract us, they're giving us just, here, look at this fucking fucker, and just they cut his throat, and everybody is, all their outrage is just directed towards that fanaticism and rapture is chaos. Like it's it's the 5 minute hate, right, from 1984, which, if you're not familiar with 1984 in the book, uh, it's a society controlled by one authoritarian government, and they give people 5 minutes to hate, like their like images of their enemy, so that they're not directed at the state. All their negative emotions are um, neutralized, basically, right? So, and I was seeing other videos too from black people, from gay people, from trans people who were really supportive of Charlie Kirk and his willingness to get young people involved in politics, right? Ultimately, because his whole thing was like, prove me wrong. Let's have a conversation about it and discuss what we know, what we don't know. Which that's something I can respect. And you know, after his death, listening to where he was in life, and and some of the people he was putting forth and letting talk and inspiring to talk about how the worldview is shifting, and where America is going, right? If we're paying attention to who really runs our country, specifically like his friendship with Tucker Carlson towards the end, when he was being pressured by the Israel lobby to neutralize Tucker Carlson's voice, he instead let him speak at his events. And I think during the last one that they shared together, he told Tucker Carlson, "Go max, like don't hold back, just say the truth." And I think that comes from a shared love of our country and where we're ultimately going if we leave our lives in the hands of people who are content with giving us crumbs until they run to the bomb shelters. So I talked just to a couple of my coworkers, right? A 23-year-old guy who's my manager. He's younger than me, but he's my manager. He believes he didn't deserve it. 34-year-old man who was in the military. We talked about it. He sees it as like just the beginning of more violence coming, which that's a lot of why I've put time and energy into making this series as informative about these things that people know nothing about, because if there's going to be a generational upheaval, a change of power, a change of hands in power, then ideally enough innocent blood has already been shed, and it's a mockery of America and us as humans if we're going to be directed to kill each other just because we're Democrats or Republicans or Trump supporters or blue hairs, whatever the case may be. Because we should at least be smart enough to see that we're countrymen before everything and anything, and that's we've all been taken for a ride collectively. I think I've said those exact words. I mean, even Charlie Kirk, when faced with the Epstein stuff, he was told from, I don't know, Trump himself or somebody else in the cabinet that it was a hoax, or I don't know what the hell. And his response to I'm gonna trust my government. So he was willing to work with them so far. And it got to the point where he viewed Benjamin Netanyahu as a bully, a prime minister from a foreign country who has visited the White House more than any other prime minister or president from any other country in history. Record amounts of time since Trump took office. And I'm not going to have the argument that Kamala would have done better simply because if Joe Biden wasn't cogent, then she sat idly by while our country was being used to fund the Holocaust in Gaza. That it's that simple. It's literally that, like you see the memes about how people care about Punch the Monkey or the penguin killing himself, and it's like they're reaching their hands in our pockets for our pay and bombing children with it. So I guess I meant and I mean to go over the many irregularities, clues, bits of information that came out and around uh, September 10th, the day of Charlie Kirk's assassination, which I view as a spit in the face to Americans. And beyond that, if it's not just about America, humanity. What a lot of people who have analyzed this, if Tyler Robinson is not guilty, and once again we have this Lionel Nation, who's been on the radio and has also been a lawyer for 39 years, basically saying that the government has no case. They can't match what shot Charlie Kirk to the gun that they produced.
For example, this is my dream. I'm going to have a witness list you can't believe. 200 people. And the first one I'm going to do is, let's assume I've got some Marine sniper, some guy retired, gunnery sergeant. He's an expert in this. And I'm going to say, Sergeant or retired, did you try to replicate this shot? I sure did. How was it? Harder than you think. And I know what I'm doing. Could you use this rusty relic Mauser 98 30-06 to pull this shot off? Do you know what it takes? He said to zero in the scope, and the scope's a piece of garbage. And he did this for the first time. His breathing, he got up there, he did the reconnaissance. You've got to get, and before you do this, to pull this off, you just can't pull a rifle and shoot. He's there to make sure he balances it. Nobody else was hit. Nobody was shot. How did he do this? I don't know. Could you do it? Barely. And can you then take your gun, take a screwdriver after you're done, break this gun apart, take it down, and then put it back together again because they found it intact, wrapped in something? How many times did he take it apart? And then he tells his girlfriend, boyfriend, lover, gay, whatever it is, would you go get this for me? That's granddaddy's shooting iron. Now think about this. What if Clayton goes and he does this and he says, hey, hon, do me a favor. Would you go back to that murder scene where everybody's looking, right, where all the drones are there? Can you go get this rifle and walk out with it? Because and not be caught, because you know what? My grandfather's going to kill me if he. I mean, this story is crazy. Now, then we're going to get into this one. Candace Owens I saw a video on her show where others had it, I guess, a scene from behind him. There's no exit wound. Yes. Nothing. So I'm going to say, okay, let me see the medical examiner's report. What did you recover? Let me see this. What is it? Is it metal? Is it plastic? Because there's a lot of other theories out there. I don't know, but people have talked about exploding mics and a variety of other things. If this jury is going to sit back and say, what am I doing here? I've got a guy who confessed to something. I've got a guy who, and by the way, all of this shooting, if there's no rifle, if it is suppressed, we don't talk about rifles. We don't talk about shooting. Do you know what it's like to hear you're hearing this sniping, this murder case, where you can't talk about the shooting? What are you
Right.
talking about? He's confessing to something. This case is a dog. I don't know, and it's turning more and more into it.
and linked to Tyler Robinson. That's ultimately um, the problem here. The Mauser is a sniper rifle from World War II or World War One, even, right? And the 30-06, which we went over in the first episode, is a round that should have vaporized Charlie's head, not left a tiny little nick in his neck. Candace Owens has gone as far too. It's been a massive effort, massive grassroots effort to expose the lies and the cover up of whatever is going on here, and we can thank the viewers of not only Candace Owens, Baron Coleman, Lionel Nation, other people like this, Jimmy Dore as well. But people in the administration now, Joe Kent, who has vocalized that, and this is the deputy of counterintelligence or something like this, right? Head of 18 intelligence agencies, maybe 17 or 16. So there is 18, and he's in control or like oversees 16 or 17 with Tulsi Gabbard. And this came out previously, and he stated it himself when he recently quit his job, that when he tried to investigate foreign influence or foreign involvement in Charlie Kirk's murder, he was stopped by the FBI, by Kash Patel specifically. And if you want to just meme all the fell for it awards, fine, you can do it. Like, put fell for it 1,000 times in the comments. But Kash Patel stated intent with the FBI and the shadow government was not when it ended up happening. He's actually become implicated now in the cover up of both Charlie Kirk's murder and the Epstein files. So I think ultimately these people, Charlie Kirk was murdered because he managed to talk Trump out of bombing Iran last year during the 12-day war. I mean, we bombed Iran, but he stopped it. His voice was one, I guess, that Trump took seriously and ultimately listened to in stopping it in 12 days, because we now have seen what could have happened and what is happening. You know, we just got a ceasefire right now, April 8th, April 7th, and it's for 2 weeks. So, but the destruction and the mayhem up to this point, you know, a lot of scholars, not only Charlie Kirk, people who have been in the government, military, political, and journalists, business, have monitored and watched and warned against, and every president has been challenged into attacking Iran, and none of them have. Netanyahu threatened Obama that he would nuke Iran, and Obama called his bluff. Netanyahu didn't do it. Ultimately, Israel would not want to nuke Iran. They just want to weaken the United States and get us out of the region so they can become the dominant power and keeping Iran alive so they could trade with them as the controller of the Strait of Hormuz. You know, that would be optimal for Israel, but they've been getting pummeled, as well as trying to take land from Lebanon, right? And it's all based on them being the victims and trying to prevent another Holocaust, right? So, um, when this happened, I felt a certain way about the fact that, well, ultimately, I knew nothing about Erica Kirk, right? Nobody did, really. We just see the natural human response to seeing a wife and children lose their husband and father is just, sympathy and shock. But her behavior before and after the event is like it speaks to an entirely different person than we were presented to initially upon September 10th and the following days. She is revealed to have been, and front facingly, she openly admits all of these things herself. Candace Owens is to thank for all these revelations and verifications, I would say, of Erica Kirk's life leading up to her meeting of Charlie in Israel and her ambitions afterwards, which now seem that people in Charlie Kirk and Erica Kirk's organization, Turning Point USA, seem to be presidential. They're looking at running Erica Kirk maybe with J.D. Vance, purportedly. Erica Kirk, formerly Erica Franceville, was a real estate agent in New York and mainly rented to models, right? Russian models. She also helped victims of child trafficking in China and Romania. Now, with this background, she was also like Miss Arizona at some point early on in her life, like in her early 20s. In a pageant that belonged to Donald Trump, right? These all look like good things on your resume if you had a resume that you were trying to make matter, right? People grieve differently, right? And she's a grieving widow. These two sentences or statements have become memes at this point in reference to Erica Kirk. The fireworks, the sequins, her telling Candace stop. The videos that have come out just days after she lost her husband in front of the world, about her laughing about merch sales.
Emoji Zoom things. Wow. I don't even know where to begin. The fact that we were able to pull off an event of a century, like, it's just insane. We had over 275,000 people that attended, and stadium overflow, Westgate, insane, you guys. And then you have, was it 100 million? We had thousands that were registered to vote. I think We're at like over 200,000 for merch sales. Don't quote me on that because I think it just keeps like bumping up like crazy. But I just wanted to say a huge thank you to the events team. My husband's dead. Like, I'm not trying to be morbid, but he's dead. And it puts life into perspective of how short life is and relationships.
Bringing her children to the office around strangers. She said she had no problem being a single mother business operator because she saw her mom do the same thing, basically. And as I'm saying, a lot of this information comes from Candace Owens' investigation. She is also another one that helped humanize Charlie for me because she, as I've said before, I didn't follow Turning Point or Candace Owens or Charlie Kirk when they were coming up in around 2020, 2021, the years before. Even when Kanye was walking around with them, at that point I had kind of become uninspired with Kanye as far as just a fan of his music. But the video of Candace and Charlie listening to a Kanye song and those videos of them hanging out and, you know, just being friends.
And then, of course, there was always some hip hop mixed in, Ignition, remix.
You don't understand, like, the divinity of him tweeting that. Like,
I'm living in the 21st century. There's something mean to it.
you don't understand, like, the divinity of.
You could see why exactly Candace Owens isn't going to stop until the FBI admits they fumbled the investigation and it implicates everybody who is involved in the cover up of this this event. Now, in the days leading up to his assassination, he was telling a close friend of his he felt like his life was in danger because he had refused the Zionist donors and their insisting of him not pushing the Israel issue enough. And he was aware that sentiment was changing, especially for people under 50 years old, about Israel's influence in our government and their display of barbarism in the events following October 7th, 2023. He couldn't defend those arguments. It wasn't Christian, you know?
My contention here is that some in the pro-Israel camp are so knee-jerk about calling you anti-Semitic or getting deeply offended if you say anything that doesn't align with their narrative, that it undermines their own cause. And I have to tell you, I find it very irritating because I do feel like some of us have earned the right to have some credibility on the subject of Israel and don't want to be called those names when we have some mild pushback on some of the overreaches.
I'm so glad you brought this up, and I would second that. Megan, I think I have a bulletproof resume showing my defense of Israel, both on campus, on social media, to great, let's just say mockery and scorn at times, because I believe it right? I believe in the scriptural land rights given to Israel. I believe in fulfillment of prophecy. And again, I'm not a theologian, but I'm a Christian. My life was changed in Israel. The spiritual energy is so amazing there. I want them to win. I've said that repeatedly.
Same.
And however, Megan, you're hitting on something very potent and important. Now, let me first say, I don't want to judge an entire group because there's been many people in the pro-Israel world that have been very sweet, very kind, very nuanced, very Charlie, you're with us. You don't have to agree all the time. However, and I will say this, the behavior by a lot, both privately and publicly, are pushing people like you and me away. Not like we're going to be pro-Hamas, not
No.
like we're going to, but we're like, honestly, the way you are treating me is so repulsive. I have text messages, Megan, calling me an anti-Semite. And Megan, by some, not all, by some.
No, it's very irritating.
It's
It's been
almost
so
as if
unfair.
you,
They were coming after you after Turning Point for, among other
Oh,
things,
it's
that
so-
you had Dave Smith there. Dave Smith is allowed to
Questioning my-
criticize Israel. You had both sides. The Israeli side was
you're not allowed to,
overrepresented.
though. No, you're not allowed to. It's even worse than that. Again, I just want to repeat for the 5th time. I love Israel. I want Israel to win. But my moral character is now being put into question, Megan. Not my decisions. Not like, hey, are you doing this? Is it smart or is it dumb? But no, I am a bad person if I do this.
Per his definition, right? We're talking about stories where they've detained Palestinian prisoners and used dogs to rape those prisoners. Amongst other things, burying people alive. You know, he got a priest to pray over him the couple of days before he was assassinated. And Erica and other people who are pro Erica, right, were saying that there was this Etsy witch who had cast a curse on Charlie Kirk, and that's why he was getting a prayer, or getting a priest to pray over him, which Candace Owens thinks is ridiculous. He had dreams, right, and this is one of the main things I wanted to say before we get into all these bits of evidence, was that him and Candace Owens were in Gifted and Talented, which we connect to the CIA and their shady doings, right? And he would have dreams that he was going to die, and Candace Owens produced text messages to this effect dating back to years before his assassination, where he just felt that he was going to be betrayed and that he was going to die, and he needed and wanted Candace to be there for him when this happened. Immediately upon the assassination, we have maybe like an excited liberal guy jumping up and cheering, right? But aside from that, there's this old man, George Zinn, who jumped up and said, "It was me. I did it." And in the midst of the confusion and people telling the cops to shoot him, his pants fall down. George Zinn was later found to have been a witness to 9/11 in New York and the bombing at the Boston Marathon. He was arrested and set free when it was found that he had no connection to the shooting, but later was found to have possession of child pornography on his phone, and was arrested again and now cannot be reached for comment. George Zinn sounds, if not like a asset to a foreign government, then definitely a patient of MK Ultra, somebody whose memory is erased and whose actions have been implanted by insidious party, right? Now, we said Charlie was on the phone and fearing for his life because he confronted his Zionist donors about not being able to defend the Israel issue any further. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, offered to take Turning Point to the next level with billions of dollars, and wanted Charlie Kirk to take a trip to Israel right before he died, so that they could have a conversation. And Charlie Kirk turned down both. Immediately after the assassination, the crime scene was contaminated, tampered with by people in the immediate vicinity. One of, I think, Charlie Kirk's chiefs of staff, who never attended these Turning Point events, was there recording. And as soon as the assassination took place, he went up to the camera that was directly behind Charlie Kirk and removed it. And his excuse later on, I think he removed the SD card specifically, but his excuse later on was that it was an expensive camera and that people were stealing stuff, and he needed to preserve that for the FBI. But he hadn't turned in the SD card to the FBI when Candace Owens had contacted him. That's where we get the footage from behind Charlie Kirk that shows when this 30-06, which is powerful enough to stop a deer in its tracks, drop it right, literally vaporize a human head, was supposedly stopped by Charlie's titanium neck of steel, which a statement which came indirectly from the medical examiner through Turning Point USA executive, that no bullet or blood came out from behind Charlie Kirk. Multiple Israeli cell phones were detected at the event, right? This stop on his tour in Utah was approved very late, Candace Owens found. Usually these things got approved a year in advance, and this had come in maybe like 2 or 3 months before. Tim Dillon reported through his sources that the head of the FBI, the evening that George Zinn was released and the killer was still on the loose, that the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, was eating at a New York restaurant, Rao's Spaghetti, slurping it up, and tweeted out what he tweeted out, that the FBI would be on the hunt for the killer, basically, right? And when they did arrest Tyler Robinson 30 and a half hours later, for some odd reason, Kash Patel felt the need to say 33 hours later, we got him, right? 33 is a number significant to Freemasonry. And it's just a number that's not correct to the amount of time that it took. Kash Patel, who is also Indian, and we can't say his ancestry is from India, right? We can't say that he's a Christian but Charlie was a Christian, right? So he basically, his statement during the end of when they caught Tyler Robinson was, "I'll see you in Valhalla, brother." Valhalla is the Greek afterlife for warriors when you die in battle. Not Greek. What did I say? I said Greek. I meant Norse, right? The Vikings. He had Charlie Kirk, before he died, had a very tense conversation with Ben Shapiro, challenging Ben Shapiro's views on Israel and America's support for Israel, and whether or not what Israel has done in the past 2 years has been a genocide, which the UN says it has. Several organizations says it has. The International Court of Crimes, the ICJ, all this other stuff. There are several organizations and countries trying to hold Israel responsible for what is essentially a genocide. So there's nothing wrong with Charlie Kirk asking Ben Shapiro this, and Ben Shapiro was very put off by these questions. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, Ben Shapiro said that he would pick up that bloody mic right where Charlie left off and continue with Charlie's mission. Now, Charlie's last message to his Zionist donors was that he was getting ready to abandon the pro-Israel cause. So, how exactly has Ben Shapiro made good on that mission? That's what I want to know. I think one of the main bits of evidence that Lionel, the lawyer of 39 years, said that will not stand in court for the government against Tyler Robinson, whose trans lover disappeared right from the face of the earth. He's a very unusual person, and now he's gone entirely, right? The cops took a search team of dogs out to the field where the gun was eventually found. The dogs didn't find it. The deputies found it later. They were like, oh, look, here it is. Now, these dogs, their sense of smell is like 2,000 to 20,000 times greater than a human's. A freshly fired gun, and for dogs that are trained to find freshly fired guns, would be like finding a Asiago Italian herb fucking plate of risotto in a medical office. It's like, it just doesn't make sense. No gunshot residue test was performed on Tyler Robinson either. Right? Utah is known for having a very extensive Mormon community. Mormons have been known to have been used by the CIA because they learn different languages and travel. They're excellent CIA assets. It's been reported, I think, by at least Kurt Metzger. You have this almost disgraced military veteran, Mitch Snow. When he was young, in the early 2000s, he discovered corruption. Basically, that the military was being used to traffic drugs across the border in Mexico. And the government tried to squash him for the rest of his life. He only recently, I think, got that cleared from his record, or got it settled. But during one of these events where he was meant to report to a military base to talk about this, he claims to have seen Erica Kirk there. And this was a day or two before Charlie Kirk was murdered. You had, in response, Alex Jones come out and basically call Candace Owens a crazy bitch, and to basically, a lot of controlled opposition has been used. A lot of money from somebody's propaganda budget has been allocated into getting influencers on X and in the media to basically challenge anybody's mental wellness who goes against Turning Point USA, Erica Kirk, or believes that Israel may have had something to do with all these strange events. Now, if the 30-06 and the Mauser was not used to murder Charlie Kirk, there have been other people or other theories that there may have been a second gunman in the crowd or nearby with a smaller caliber bullet. But the prevailing theory that's coming out right now, that at first for me seemed extremely far-fetched, was the exploding microphone theory, where apparently the microphone that was attached to Charlie's shirt contained an explosive round, and at a certain point, which another odd thing here is like a bunch of Charlie security was doing symbols, like baseball signals, right immediately before his assassination, that at the right time a trigger was implemented nearby and his microphone exploded and a round went into his neck. Apparently, the company that makes either Charlie's microphone or a specific round of explosives, like secretive explosives for the CIA, was completely destroyed in the week after Charlie Kirk's assassination. And I'll try and find that article. In the Epstein files, it was disclosed that certain military operations use something called color of the day when they're conducting an operation in a public space, but they need to be covert. They will all wear a certain color sock or t-shirt, and they call that the color of the day. And I don't know how this got leaked in the Epstein files, but I did hear this reported that one of the dates redacted for the color of the day for the color of the day was the date of Charlie Kirk's assassination. And I guess the purpose of like this flood of information as well is just to make things so confusing as to not point in any one direction. But I think the players remain the same. We had Netanyahu, after all, literally 30 minutes, within 30 to 40 minutes of the assassination happening, expressing his concerns and condolences, even before our own president, who was a dear friend of Charlie Kirk, had a chance to make a statement on it. And within 48 to 72 hours of that, he was on American and Israeli news stations saying that Israel had nothing to do with the murder of Charlie Kirk, which I made a point in a recent Instagram post. Why didn't Australia make a video saying that they had nothing to do with Charlie Kirk's murder? Why didn't Japan release a video saying that they had nothing to do with Charlie Kirk's murder? Or Russia, or China, or Kazakhstan, where Borat's from? Why didn't they release a video? Israel did. A lot of paid influencers would say that we have footage of Tyler Robinson at the scene of the crime before and after. But the Mauser, which might be from World War I, can only be disassembled with a screwdriver. And the footage of what is purportedly Tyler Robinson leading up to and after the shooting the way that he's moving does not indicate that he has a rifle down his pants or in the back of his shirt. If he has a rifle, it's disassembled, and even still, the two pieces are not like visibly apparent on the security footage. If we look back at Erica Kirk, her parents in question had very strange backgrounds and upbringings, the specifics of which escape me at this point, but Candace Owens covered it for about 5 or 6 episodes. All about Erica Kirk. It's there on YouTube. One thing I do remember, though, is that one of the names that are in Erica's family tree is Lombardi, or Lombardo, which is a famous crime family. There's a clip of Charlie Kirk basically challenging the notion of October 7th, right, which was noted as a security failure. And if you've made it like to 10 episodes and you don't know what October 7th is, I forgive you. It was the most recent terrorist attack by Hamas, who controls Palestinian government in Gaza, on innocent Israeli citizens. It took the life of nearly 1,000, apparently, which honestly, some of those deaths have to be attributed to Israel's Hannibal Directive. It's a military directive which indicates that they are to kill their own citizenry to prevent them from becoming hostage and leverage against Israel. Charlie Kirk is seen in a clip that has been taken down from the internet multiple times, apparently. It's from the Patrick Bet David podcast, I believe, challenging the notion of the October 7th security failure.
We go dark. I put all those things out there.
Yeah.
How did these guys not know this was taking place?
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country's a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still have the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier, right? The whole country is surveilled. And so let me just kind of go through this. We don't talk about Israeli politics very often, and most Americans don't know this. The last 9 months, Israel was on the brink of civil war. It's not an exaggeration. This judicial stuff, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis taking to the streets because Bibi Netanyahu was basically redefining the Israeli constitution. That's not an exaggeration, right? He said the judicial branch has too much power. There were protests planned this week against Netanyahu, where they anticipated tens of thousands of people to take to the streets. That's all gone, Patrick.
He says, and it is known that every 18-year-old in Israel enlists in the army. So there's endless amounts of 18-year-olds with AR-15s up and down the border in every city. And he just doesn't buy that the alarms didn't sound and nobody was informed for the amount of time that Netanyahu and the IDF report. There's the King Kill Secret Society sacrifice angle, where even the shape of the courtyard where Charlie Kirk was murdered is significant. It's a Pentagon, and there's also the image of apparently a menorah in it, right? As far as the crime scene being destroyed, within 8 days of his assassination, the concrete behind where Charlie Kirk was sitting was ripped out and redone, which I've never heard of being allowed in a murder investigation. Netanyahu is being stated as this current altercation with Iran as being his life's work, something he strived for 40 years. And there's video of it reported repeatedly saying that Iran was only weeks away from building a nuclear weapon, which many people themselves have now stated if Iran wanted a nuclear weapon, they could have just bought one from China, bought one from Russia, and strapped it to whatever the fuck they had. And they never did. And they made promises with our government to never do that, and their own government. So without it's stated, unfortunately, that Trump just makes his decisions based off whoever is the last person to talk to him. And Joe Kent, when he resigned from his job, said that his last conversation with Charlie Kirk told him to do whatever he can to stop the war in Iran. And this is where we're at. Here's some real news.
But I will say that after Charlie was killed, Benjamin Netanyahu
very quickly denied responsibility for it. I was shocked by this. It did not seem natural. Now, I'm not saying that that means that anything in that quadrant was responsible for the murder. All I know is that we didn't get a decent investigation. But I did feel, and maybe I hope you will tell me that I'm imagining this. I did feel that denial by Netanyahu was effectively a Rorschach test and maybe designed to be one. That I was supposed to feel alarmed by this, and a normal person was supposed to think, that is batshit crazy. He said they didn't do it. Obviously they didn't do it. So anyway, I'm not telling you that I see the evidence that somebody did it, but what I am telling you is we've just found ourselves in a war that Charlie would have been opposed to. We know that from his public and private statements, and that he would have been a formidable force in opposition. So what am I to think? Why? At least we should have an investigation that tells us for sure that we know who committed the crime and that there wasn't something larger about it. But look, now I've said unforgivable things, it's done.
I don't know why that's unforgivable. I mean, this is an American citizen, someone you knew, and you're not accusing anyone of anything. And I do think, leaving aside Charlie's murder and, the question of who did it, for a foreign leader to weigh in immediately and hog all the attention and make it all about himself and start issuing all these statements about how Charlie lived and died for Israel is totally unforgivable. I say this as his friend. I just think if someone did that to me after my death, I think my family would be outraged. It's not about you, right, BB?
But it seemed true to me, and I had done some work on that. I knew a bunch of people pretty close to that story, so I thought that. And I said that to Charlie, and I said, but I'm not going to say that because I don't want to make your donors mad. I know it's just going to be like an endless flurry of text telling you to stop or you're going to lose a bunch of funding. And he looked at me, I'll never forget it, and said, go all the way. Do it. Go all the way. I said, man, a lot of things I can talk about. I don't need to talk about that. And he said, do it.
And here's the thing, Stu. I was recently going through some old pictures to find one of me and Charlie that I knew we took at that event. And not only did I find pictures of me and Charlie, but I found a video of me, Tucker, and Charlie speaking backstage right before Tucker went out. Tucker and I were talking. Charlie came over and interrupted for just a second. And you can hear him on this tape, which I've listened to many times. It's very clear on my phone, less clear here probably as we play it. But he says to Tucker, go Max. He interrupts the conversation because he has to say to Tucker something. And what was so important to him to tell Tucker was, go Max. Go Max. It's quick. It just happens to be on tape. And it backs up what Tucker said.
This tragedy, this assassination, this is by some powerful people, man. This wasn't just some random, angry, disgruntled individual with a pistol that came up and, shot this man and they wrestled him to the ground. This was something that was calculated and planned out. Be seated, knew the distance. They knew his security detail. They had been following or watching Charlie for some time. And he was just a voice, man. You know, were they that threatened by what he said?
Amidst high tension surrounding Kirk's murder. And a local transgender woman is rallying for unity amidst high tension surrounding Kirk's murder.
Although she was not a supporter, she's encouraging others to look past the political divide in America and instead choose peace. Fox 11's Gina Silva.
Give a warm welcome to Mrs. Erica Kirk.
So one of the craziest things I've heard after the assassination was that Charlie Kirk was a clone. And I got this from Professor Hamamoto, who
she's a teacher, because she was glorifying this horrific event. And granted, I'm glad she was fired. But folks, this is where the pre-crime is coming from. Is coming down on our reaction to this event. And so let's look at the periphery. Let's don't look at just all focused on, well, is this a real, was he really assassinated? Was it a blood bag, or was he really shot from someone from the roof? It looked like the angle of the shot came from beneath or underneath, or, you know what? Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Oh, is Charlie Kirk a clone? Was he a body double? Sure. You know what? It doesn't really matter. If he is a clone, and I've seen pictures of many versions of Charlie Kirk and his wife, and we've seen many versions of Hillary Clinton and all of the, Bill Biden, everybody, all of them have body doubles and most likely clones. But does it really matter? The fact is that they are setting a narrative and they're watching us. Okay, the hidden hand is watching us.
Is extremely informed in what people would consider conspiracy theories, right? But he has evidence to provide. And we went over Jeffrey Epstein and his ambitions to clone. He was hanging around scientists all the time, Kurt Metzger thinks that whether or not Charlie was a clone, that he was a promised sacrifice, that he was basically like raised and bred to be sacrificed in front of the masses. The two things that I can relent to the left. One, that he was a rage baiter, I guess. He would pick issues that were divisive on purpose and, argue with college students who may not have been as informed or as passionate as he was about these things, kind of just indoctrinated. But I think that goes further to prove his point and his reasoning, and that Secondly, he was just a podcaster. I think this is, again, an example of being reductive. I don't purport to be a Christian, and if I am a Christian, I'm a very lackluster one. I do believe if there was an emissary from God who came to prove that we are all connected to God and had to sacrifice himself to prove it, then, you know, that sacrifice is worth something. And the story alone is one of passion and compassion, right? You can argue about whether he deserved empathy, but I think the ultimate question is whether or not you're capable of it, in spite of like the darkness of the world and the heaviness of reality. You shouldn't give a reason as to why you're not giving empathy if you're capable of it. And ultimately, you know, just based off of what we've gone over this series, I can understand why people would only see things one way or their way. I mean, that's always been apparent to me, even without conspiracy theories. Ultimately, I was so affected by it because I do believe the future is in our hands. We are responsible for our actions and our country, our communities. And to continuously be lethargic, self-centered, leaving it to higher, sinister powers to decide our fate. It's exactly how we got to where we're at right now. And if we are capable of enacting change, if we're capable of change and growth, then we should try that, no matter how small the effort or how hard it may seem, you know. The leftists are adamant that what Trump promised and what his supporters adhere to is fascism. But murdering somebody for having an opinion that you don't agree with and calling it liberalism or revolution, it's the same thing, you know? When we reduce ourselves to the bloody brutality of war that has been our history for the last 5,000 years, we deprive ourselves of the gift of divinity that has been bestowed upon us that we continuously refuse for an easier and quicker solution. I'm not a Christian, but Christ's sacrifice was so that nobody else had to die, you know? The entirety of this season, I've failed to even put forth a percentage of progress on my novel. You know, I'm not perfect. I procrastinate. I'm also right there fighting and trying with you every moment and increment that we can take in God's name is a victory. And I plan to use this time between now and when you next see me to finish my book, improve my health, and continuing to go max. To not stop speaking the truth, and to not leave my countrymen behind. Thank you for everything. I'll see you next time. This has been the news tonight.